Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Talk Photography. As I'm sure you know by now, I'm Mark Cleghorn. I'll be hosting tonight. Got an amazing photographer from Copenhagen, Jan Hammerstad, who's going to be chatting about 8 of his images. If you're new to the Photographer Academy, but if you'd like to join up, it's as little as £100 a year, where you get access to all our content, new and old, as well as all the recordings that we do on our live sessions as well with it. If you're interested to know more, just click onto the yellow banner if you're on the front page. That should take you then through to the information page of what you actually get for your membership and so on with it. But you can also join at any stage if you're kind of looking over the website and so on with it, by the kind of the Join Academy now on the top. So without delay, let's officially start tonight's session. Jan, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Are you going to switch on your web? There you
go.
How you doing, bud?
Hi.
We were having a quick chat before we went live and everything else with it, and thanks for joining us from sunny Copenhagen.
Yes.
Is it 1 hour ahead there now? We're 7:30.
Yeah, we're 8:30 in UK. We're 8:30. Yeah.
And do you get less light in winter, less than us again, because obviously you're so close to the dark zones?
I think so. It's been dark for since for at least 3 or 4 hours by now over here. So it is quite kind of dark here. We have very short days at the moment.
Yeah, it's and thank goodness we're talking about studio photography, where we can shoot any time of day, because obviously you're going to use kind of studio light and everything else with it.
One of my main reasons for doing studio photography is that I am in control of the light all the time.
I did a chat the other day with another photographer, but he's from the US and he's a studio photographer and he lives in the world of light. I went, LA he's from, and it was like, why are you in a studio kind of thing with it, you know? But anyway. Jan, before we start to look at images, let's get to know a little bit about the man behind the camera, as it were. Where did the photography journey start for you? Where did it all begin?
It actually started very early on. In school, we had a selective topic that we could, just like you have woodwork or needles and threads or whatever. And then at my school, we could pick photography. Okay. And I had this very, very good teacher. She was a brilliant photographer herself, and she taught us, about light and about cameras and about this was of course in the old film days with the analog pictures. So we also had a dark chamber at the school, and we learned all about the process. And to be honest, she simply planted the seed in me for being very, very interested in photography. And it has basically followed me ever since I was about 13, around that age. And I've been taking pictures basically all my life. I had a break for about 6 years, just around when I was 22. And it happened to be that it was just when we were shifting from analog photography to digital photography. So when my son was born, and I thought, well, I need to take pictures of him playing football and things like that, then I needed to get a new camera. So I went to a camera store, and I just needed, just a tiny small camera, because I just wanted to take pictures of my son, nothing fancy, just some. And I actually came out of the store with the biggest camera I could buy, because everything, came back from everything I knew from what I had been shooting before with the normal SLRs and so on. And I still remember when I bought my first SLR that, I was very fascinated, and I was almost hypnotized by looking through the lens. All the colors and the coating on the lens. I was really basically hypnotized by it, and probably been ever since.
Wow.
And then 12 years ago, I started my professional career as a photographer. That's when I, to be honest, I was a little bit bored in my old job, and then it happened to be that in the building where my old company was, there were a vacancy, and I talked to my wife if I could sort of take the plunge and see if that could if it could hold. And we gave it a year, and within a year I had tripled the space in my studio. So now I basically have almost 200 square meters of studio. So now I'm doing a lot of photography, which and every single session I think is fun. That's the main thing of it.
Excellent. So even though tonight we're talking about model photography, is it predominantly model photography that you do, or is it other things?
No, it is predominantly. I've always said that about 90% of my pictures are in my studio and involve models, but around 99% of my pictures involve people in some sort. So a little bit is outside the studio, but most is in the studio. And most of what I do on a daily basis is either portraits or clothing commercials or jewelry commercials. That's basically the three main things that I do. And then, to keep the spirit, because sometimes work can be a little bit boring, and portraits are not always the most fun to do, especially if it's just for LinkedIn profile pictures or stuff like that. Then I do my own projects also to keep up the creative energy and learn new things and basically just be creative. So most of, and then that's what when I do sort of the art photography or some of the pictures that you're going to see today is basically done because I needed to get some creative energy let loose in the studio.
Yeah. So going back to what you were on about, you kind of had a tech background. Do you think the transition to, first of all, digital was because of the tech mind? Did you find that easy? Because obviously it was Photoshop and, compared to the film days, but even the film is a technical mind, with exposure. It's almost easier today because you can kind of shoot it not right on the back of the camera, you recalibrate, you shoot again and so on. But the transition from film to digital, I'm always interested with photographers who've kind of come through the same curve as me. Did you find it easy, or was it like a mind bending?
No, I actually found it quite easy, and I also have the sort of, I feel that digital photography has so many more options than the old analog, and I'm not one of those that sort of romanticize the analog photography. Analog photography was very, very nice at the time, and I learned a lot from analog photography. And I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, but I am not going back to analog photography. I see a lot of photographers, trying out films and going back to analog. I'm not there at all. I really like doing my Photoshop work, and it's so much easier when you have good resolution digital pictures to do this on. So, and just a small, how to say, in Danish we would say a curl on the tail. A little side story is, originally I'm actually a chemical engineer, which actually corresponds very nicely with the analog photography. And then when for some reason, for several reasons during my life, I changed from chemical engineering into electrical engineering and IT, and at the same time I changed to digital photography. So the photography sort of followed my path in life.
Wow. I once made the mistake of telling a girl that she said, "Oh, your hands smell a bit funny." I went, "Oh, it's developer," and she went, "What?" We'll leave it there. Anyway, cool. So we're going to talk about pretty much studio photography and things, really. What kind of inspires you in studio? Is it the lighting? Is it the technical? Is it the brief? What is your main inspiration as a photographer?
Well, I usually know a lot of photographers that I talk to consider me to be a somewhat technical photographer. I don't consider myself as that. I tend to not be too technical in the studio. Of course, I know how the lighting is working in certain situations and how to set the light if I need it, but I'm not one of those guys that run around with the light meter and measures the light on the back and everywhere to make sure that I have enough lamps. And so I would rather just, you know, take a picture, look at it, and see if this corresponds to what I had in mind, and then go from there maybe and make small adjustments along the ways often. So I'm leaning much more against, you know, being creative in the studio. That's what I feel that I am best at, you know, trying especially different angles and trying maybe sometimes to change the lights a little bit. But it's mostly to be one of my most, how do you say in English, the most important thing about model photography is basically, it's not the camera, it's not the light, it's talking to the model. It's basically always talking to the model and basically also being nice to the model, but most importantly talking to the models. I started doing workshops for photographers 8 years ago, I think, and it actually came from an experience I had in my studio when photographers were renting my studio, and the model came to the studio with him, and when he started shooting her, he didn't say anything at all to her, and she was sort of like she was a very experienced model, and she was trying to make him tell her what he wanted from her in how, you know, how to pose and the mood he wanted, and he literally didn't say anything. He was just picking up his camera and shooting, and then looking down at the picture in the camera and then shooting again. And at that moment, to be honest, I felt very sad for her because it was a really bad experience for her as a model. And at that moment, I decided that I needed to do workshops basically on how to talk and direct models, because you need, if you really want good pictures, you need to be able to talk to the models and direct them appropriately.
Brilliant. Let's go on to the first image, shall we?
Yeah.
So our first image is the girl with the flowers in the hair.
Yeah. She's called Ada. This is I nowadays I usually almost always work with agency models. They are a little bit easier to work with in my experience. They never cancel in the last minute and stuff like that. This is a very good example of something that I really love doing. I love doing beauty photography because it's I get to close in on details that I really enjoy doing, and in most cases, as in this, I need a good model, and I also need a good makeup artist, and I need something that will, it simply just helps the picture come along very nicely. And for this, I had some ideas that I wanted to use this. I wanted to make some head piece with do you call it gauze in this fabric?
Netting.
Yeah, netting. Yeah. And then some flowers put in there, and this one it turned out really nice because I think because she has very nice features as well in her face. So, and that's something that I almost always look for, that they have nice features and work well. This was a series that I was really happy to do. One of the things that if you want to do something like this, one thing you have to realize is that the process until you can actually take a picture with your camera is very long. I think it takes about, in this case, it took about 2 hours for the makeup artist to make everything, to make her look nice and to arrange the flowers. And I was part of arranging the flowers and so on. But it took about 2 hours until we were at the point where we could start shooting. And then the shooting itself took maybe half an hour or so, because then when everything is set up, then it's relatively fast to do the shooting. And the very first time I did a beauty shoot like this, I was very new at this and maybe a little bit naive, because we had agreed on starting at 12 o'clock, and at 12:15 I was ready with my camera, everything set up and lighting was in order, and 1.5 hours later the model and the makeup artist were ready with their things. So I learned a lot on the first shoot about, you know, being patient, and these things take time as well, and you need to let them have the time to do it right, basically.
Yeah, very good. How was working just outside Copenhagen influenced you? Because there's a big art world, isn't there, around, Denmark and Copenhagen. I was lucky enough to go to the museum there, as I was saying to you before we went live, at least a decade and a half ago. But there's a big art influence there, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, it's almost got a little bit of Renaissance kind of element and things.
Yeah,
How is it?
We went for a little bit. I think we are all influenced by things we see, and so I have, like Picasso had his blue period and so on, and I probably also, when I look back on my photography 20 years from now, I can probably also tell that in this period I was very interested in Renaissance paintings or stuff like that, and I have some photographs that are inspired at least by the lighting of some of the Renaissance painters. I have some that look like a Vermeer, the Dutch painter, and stuff like that. And this was also an example that I wanted to look modern in this Nordic, very simple style, but also have the a little bit of influence from an old painter. It could be maybe an old painting that this was made to look like.
And it does have that quality, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Lighting is different because obviously they were more or less, window lit and all that kind of thing. Yep. Whereas we can see from the catchlight in the eye, the position and things really. But it has characteristics there. As soon as I saw it when you sent it over to me, I went, "Oh my good." Anyway, talk to me about technique in the studio. What's your setup for this kind of image? What would you be doing?
The lighting for this is actually quite simple. It's a beauty dish raised a little bit above her head, and then an angle about 45. It's usually never exactly 45. I tend to tilt it a little more upwards than what is described as being the right thing. I feel that I get a better lighting on the entire face when I tilt it a little bit upwards, but it's basically that. And then I have a white flag on one side and a black flag on the other side. The white flag is on the left side of the picture, on the right side of her, and the black is on the other side. And basically just to give it a little bit of structure in her jawbones and so on. So the setup is actually quite simple here, and the back is basically just my white wall in the studio. That's and she's been pulled out some meters. My studio is 12 meters wide, so I can pull them out from the wall quite a bit, and I think she's about 3 or 4 meters out, so that the lighting is on the wall, even though it's white, just becomes this gray kind of color.
No, good. And as far as do you think the style kind of follows through in a corporate commercial lighting as well? Is it something that you would follow through in your more commercial work?
Yeah, it is. I could probably also mention about this picture, and I have a medium format camera as well as a DSLR, and this one is actually taken with a medium format camera. This is a phase 1 camera.
Phase 1,
and it simply because when I do beauty work like this, I really love the texture that it provides, and the depth of field that it provides also on the big aperture openings. So this is an example of this. Otherwise, I'm usually most of the time I'm shooting Nikon cameras, but for something like this, it's my phase 1 camera.
And technical part wise, do you do all the retouching and processing yourself, or do you put that out, or what do you do?
It depends a little on this one, because I knew this one was a good picture. I really like this picture, and in those cases I don't really always trust myself with doing the editing, because I want it to be really good. But I have some I've met quite a few good retouchers. I've also met a lot of bad retouchers, but you know, I have a small list of 3 or 4 picture retouchers that I like, and this one is actually a retoucher from Ukraine that helped me on this one. But most of the other pictures you will see I've edited myself.
Brilliant. So speaking about editing and things, are you a Capture One or Lightroom or Adobe Raw? What's your basic?
I'm you could probably tell, since I'm also a Phase One man, I am also a Capture One man. So
I had to ask it out because of the questions.
No, but I actually started using Capture One long before I bought my Phase One, because I was one of the first to start using Lightroom when version 1 came out, and it was rubbish, to be honest. I threw it out 2 weeks later or something like that, and then I started looking around what else is there, and then I came across Capture One, and I've actually been using that ever since. And I have a lot of reasons why. The main reason was basically that it was at that point much better than Lightroom, and I still feel that it is, especially in my line of work, because it has some features surrounding skin tones that to me is essential, basically, and I haven't seen it in any other editing program I've come across. But I also use Photoshop a lot. I mean, I start my process in Capture One doing all the light and coloring, and then I almost always switch into Photoshop to do, you know, skin editing and some other things that is required. I basically live by the rule: if no one is going to miss it, it has to go. So if there's anything in a picture that no one will miss, then I will remove it. I like you know, I don't know, we always talk about the Nordic style, the Scandinavian style, being very simple and very you know, we don't need any excess things. We just need very simple things in a picture. So that's basically why I think that I will remove anything that I feel disturbs in any way in the picture. So most of my pictures are very, very clean, and I like that.
I came across Capture One. I was in Stockholm demonstrating an exhibition there. And I was getting ready to actually kind of demonstrate in a few hours' time, and I was demonstrating on a stand, but I was shooting into Lightroom at the time, tethering, and it used to feel like it was going to the UK and back by the time. And I kind of began to watch this commercial photographer. They'd spent about 2 hours rigging this shoot up for like a 5-minute shot, and he was blasting. It was a Blad with a Hasselblad with a Phase One on the back and things really. Yeah. He was blasting it, and it was coming up on the screen like this. And I went up to his assistant at the end. I went, "What are you using?" And he said, "Capture One." I went, "Oh, I've buried my head in the sand for so long. I literally walked across the hall and bought a subscription straight away with it and things really." Anyway, enough about me. Back to you.
Now you mention it, because that's I actually at one point I tried going back to Lightroom because everyone is using Lightroom and it's included in my Adobe package and all of this. And I actually very quickly realized that the tethering is Capture One. At least at that point, I haven't used Lightroom for many years by now, but Capture One was so much better at tethering. So I basically just stayed there because I do a lot of tethering. Almost all of my shooting is done tethered. So.
Okay, so what's the story of this image?
The story of this image is actually that one of the very first pictures I did when I started up commercially as a project of my own was with this model, and she had some liquids flowing down her skin, and it was called Too Much Foundation because it was supposed to look like foundation just flowing down her face. And she became a very good friend of mine, and I used her as a house model for a very long time. And when we had our 5-year anniversary, we decided that we wanted to do an anniversary picture. We didn't want to do the exact same with something flowing, but we wanted to do something similar at least. So I came up with this idea of doing some clay for this, and she was in for it, and so we did this. And this is also shot with phase one. Actually, you can probably see the depth of field is very, very low here. Her eyes is crystal sharp, but her ear is very faded out. And we did this for very quickly. Actually, the problem for the model was that this is a real cleansing mask for skin, and you're not supposed to leave that on for more than 15 minutes. And she probably had it on for 2 hours, and she was burning red on this side of her face when we were done. But we both felt that it was worth it. I mean, it was easy for me to say that it was worth it, but I know that she felt it as well. So, and that's the reason. And this is actually a full portrait that has been cropped into this half face that you're looking at right now. I really like this half face because it makes me at least wonder what's going on the rest, and I get to sort of zoom in on all the cracked clay and the details in her eye and stuff like that. So that's basically the story behind this picture. We did try some other clay first, but it turned out that this face mask clay was much better.
What kind of aperture do you like to use on this kind of image?
This is taken at aperture 4, which on a medium format is basically like a 2.8 on a DSLR. I would probably have gone lower in aperture number if it were able to, but the lens goes to 4 on the one that I'm using for my phase one. It's a 120 millimeter macro that I'm using for this. It's actually not very easy to work with because it's very, very slow, and the focus is very hard to set correctly, but when you nail it, you definitely nail it. So you need a little patience. And when I started using my medium format camera, I was actually really surprised that it was kind of like going back in time. When you're using a DSLR, you get a lot of help from the camera. It helps you know. Nowadays you have eye tracing and all kind of things. In the phase one camera, you have one focus point, and it's right in the middle. So if you need it somewhere else, you need to, shift the camera afterwards and hope that the built-in algorithms knows how you're changing the camera and so on. So it's very slow. I mean, if anyone who's ever had a phase one camera in the hands know that it's very heavy, first of all, and it's really slow. When you press the trigger, it's sort of kind of clunk, and then you have a picture. It's slow to work with.
Hang on, I come from the days of Mamiya 6.7s and Pentax 7s,
yes, exactly.
You could carry around an assistant with less weight than you would the camera.
Exactly. Yes.
Cool. So, what's the most rewarding part for you about running your own studio?
I think the most rewarding is that I can set up something like this you're showing in the picture right now, because this is built in my studio. I like that I can be creative in my own studio. I can build whatever I want in my own studio. I can set it up like it's in a fancy house or a castle or whatever I like, and I have built walls of empty cardboard boxes. I have, and I like that creativity that I'm able to use because I have a very big studio. The studio itself is, as I've said, 12 meters long, and it's 10 meters wide. So I have a lot of space to work in, and it gives me I'm very grateful that I can use this for basically being creative. To me, photography is about being creative. It's and the creative process starts a long time before that I'm actually clicking a picture. Sometimes maybe even a year before that I start making plans for doing something special, and then it evolves, and then it ends up something like this, for instance.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Before we get to this image, how do you balance that creative passion with the business side of things? Is there any advice that you can give to photographers in that?
It's actually quite fun. I do a lot of jewelry shootings, and I like doing jewelry because it's very close to beauty photography, basically. And I get to get close and show the rings or the earrings, and so there is a lot of similarity there. But a lot of jewelry customers and also a lot of clothing customers are very conservative in how they feel pictures about finger rings or earrings should look. If you go to a jewelry store, you will see 10 brands that have basically the same pictures, sort of sitting like this, and it's basically all the same. And I try to provoke is not the right word, but try to suggest them to do things a little bit differently sometimes. I had an experience last year with a jewelry maker that I've been shooting quite a lot for. I know them quite well by now, and they trust me, and that's important. That the clients trust that you will do good pictures. We have done a scenario. They had some diamonds that were champagne colored, so we had done a champagne theme, sort of New Year's Eve kind of, a lot of champagnes and rings and earrings and so on. And then when we were done, I said to them, I have an idea. If you don't like it, we can just we can just skip it if you want to. Could I try to do this? And then I put the model basically upside down with her feet in the air, a glass of champagne balancing on her foot up in the air, and then she had what's called a tennis bracelet, which is basically a diamond bracelet around her ankle, and that's basically just two legs with a champagne glass and then the diamond bracelet on her ankle on a pink background. And I took this picture, and I basically felt I nailed it. It was a very nice picture. I showed it to them, and they were sort of, yeah, well, it's a very nice picture, but maybe it's a little too risky for our business. It's a lot of there's a lot of women's legs in this picture. It's maybe a little too. So I said that's perfectly fine. If I can use it for my portfolio, that's fine with me. And 2 weeks later, they called me and said, we've been looking at this picture for 2 weeks now, and we actually really, really like it. And we showed it to some of our dealers, and they were really excited about this picture. So now we're actually thinking about making it our head picture for this entire campaign. And so they did. And the picture wouldn't have come if I hadn't sort of pushed them a little bit. So I try to at least put in some of my creativity and give it a notch extra whenever I feel that they can benefit from it, that it will make something a little bit better. But even if you have clients that come to you and say, we have this brand of jewelry or clothing that we need to, I always, it would be better if we try this angle. It would be better if we tried on a red background. It would be better if we, had I try to at least share my opinion, which I feel is very important when you as a photographer wants to be an active part of this creative process.
Very good. Right, let's talk about this image, which is beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
What's it all about?
Well, it's I had a period where I was doing pictures that I called staged pictures, and I had an exhibition called Staging, which is basically all about doing things in the studio, and it was very, very important to me that it was done in the studio, and that everything was built up to look not like a studio. And then I met this model. And I wanted to work with her because she had actually been modeling professionally since she was 13, and she just, one of the fun stories about her is that the the first photographer that ever took her picture was Helena Christensen, which was one of the supermodels that then turned photographer, and she was the third photographer who used this model, Deliane, as a model, and so she was very proud of that, of course. And then I felt a little bit proud as well that now I was also shooting the same model as Helena Christensen had been shooting. But the idea of this was basically to build a scene that would look like an old painting, presented in something that would resemble maybe a castle or a mansion or something like that. It should be very fancy but also very delicate. You can probably tell that the way she's sitting is very delicate. It's not sort of luxury, but it's just nice. And I like the softness. Basically, all of my pictures are I like a soft tone. I like using aperture 4 or 2.8 or even 1.4 if I can get away with it. So I tend to do that a lot more than aperture 8 or 11, or it's very rare that I'm actually at 11, to be honest. So that's the idea of this, sort of to build up something in the studio that looks like it's somewhere else.
It feels very royal.
Yeah,
I mean, it's almost there used to be a thing, and it doesn't really happen in UK much now, but the coming of age, which was 21, and then it kind of dropped to 18, but 21 was the kind of thing. And I was lucky enough, I had some really wealthy clients in my very young years in photography, in the 80s and things, and I was lucky enough to photograph in some beautiful, opulent homes. I'm a young guy, even though I'm married with kids at this stage, but I'm able to shoot these beautiful young women coming of age. And that reminds me of this. It's almost like a princess image. It's that kind of feeling, And I didn't know you were going to use the word castle then, but you know what I'm on about. It kind of has that kind of effect, except the only thing that they would buy is a 7x5 in a frame. Instead of something huge for the wall, because that's all they ever wanted was piano images and things. Really, it's beautiful. I love that. What's your kind of go-to setup? Let's go back to the last image, Ben. What's your go-to lighting setup? What's your kind of, well, I'm definitely going to be using, it's the kind of thing that you run out of a room with in case of a fire. What's your go-to?
I basically have two go-tos, but depending on what kind of light I need. But I really like, for this, I'm using a 4-feet octabox with a grid on it. I love using the grid on big octaboxes. That's something that I really like doing, because it presents light like this, and I get a little bit of mystery, and I get a little bit of intensity in the light as well. On the other hand, if I want to do something really, a lot of the clothing that I do, my go-to lighting is basically a 6-foot wide umbrella, and that's because it just lights up everything very nicely. And if it's put a little bit to the side instead of being straight on front, you still get some definition of cheekbones and shadows on the other side as well. So I use both of these lights quite a lot. But I do tend to vary a lot. I love using my beauty disc as well. And I think in my studio I have so many different diffusers that I don't really have the count for it, to be honest. But yeah.
Going back to the umbrella, are you using a reflective umbrella or a shoot through?
Usually a shoot through. I have one setup that I often use for web shops when they just need good lighting on the clothes. Then I have a reflective umbrella, a very big one. I like big umbrellas and big octaboxes. It provides a very nice soft light. And I have I think it's a 6-foot reflection umbrella that I use quite a lot for those kinds of pictures.
Great. Love that image. Okay, our next image.
Yes, this is daylight. This is I have a very nice window in my studio as well, and I like using when the light is actually due south. So when the sun is in the middle of the day, I have a very nice light coming into the studio. And then I think this is a very good example of some of the very simple pictures that I really like taking, because there's not an excess of anything in this picture. There's just a body and some light and some structures and some darkness, basically. This picture I actually called it Dark Sun. There's no sort of big thoughts behind that, other than that it's very dark and there's a sun in there in the picture. But this is something that I really like doing when I have the sun in the right position in my studio, because we have this nice ability. This is actually a British model, Georgia Brown, who was here for during the summer here, and we did quite a few very nice pictures like this. You can probably also tell on this picture that when I do pictures like this, I tend to use a lot of grains. It's very grainy, and it's not because it's taking at a very high ISO. It's because that I actually add a lot of grain afterwards, because I feel that grains often contribute to the softness and the texture of the picture. And in a picture like this, I would make it really grainy to make it sort of part of the picture in some way.
Yeah. And let's talk nudity for a minute, and kind of, because there's different acceptances, isn't there? Or there's a different kind of, oh, it's okay for them because they're from Sweden or Denmark or France or Italy or whatever. And there's all constraints, no matter where you are in the world and things, really. Yeah. How's nudity looked at in Denmark as such?
Well, I think that we maybe are a little more liberal than a lot of the world, but it's still not that open. I mean, it's I know that we are, in most parts of the world, we are famous for being the first one to have pornography openly and stuff like that. But that's not what you see when you go to Denmark. I know that's sort of the rumor, but you don't see it at all. And you will, when you present new pictures like this, you will be faced with people telling you, was that really necessary to take a picture of a naked girl? And in the cases like this, I would say, yeah, it was, because it has a very nice shape, and that's basically what I'm telling here. I'm not interested basically in her being naked. I'm interested in the shape of her here. Yeah, the form of her.
It's beautiful.
But when we talk nudity, basically, I always say nudity is one of the tools that we have in this tool chest of photography. And it's an important tool, just like having light or having a skirt or having shoes. It's one tool, and you should use it whenever it makes sense to use it, basically.
Lovely. Lighting. What's your kind of equipment that you use at present in studio? What brand do you use?
Photo is it's. If I were to select, well, I would still use Photo today. But I actually, when I started up as a professional, I asked around what lighting equipment was the best. At that time, Godox was just coming onto market, and no one really knew a lot about it. So everyone said, well, you should either go with Photo or Elinchrom or what's the one, Broncolor, either one of those. And then I looked at Photo and liked it, and then I bought a couple of Photo lamps. And when you buy a Photo lamp, then you're stuck at Photo lamps, because you get all the modifiers, and they only fit on Photo. So I just stayed at Photo ever since, and I'm really happy with that as well. I've had a few Godox to take along when I was outside the studio, because they had some very nice battery lamps. Now I've bought some. Now Photo came out with some battery lamps as well, so I got these, and because then everything fits together.
Very cool. So our next image, which couldn't be any more Dutch than. I'm just looking at it, and it's a Dutch painting waiting to happen, isn't it?
And the really fun thing about this picture is that this is actually a lighting test. You know, sometimes it happens that when you do the lighting test, it just, because the model is relaxed and everything is sort of relaxed, it just turns out to be one of the best pictures. Not always time, but sometimes it does. And this was actually one of those cases. I was just setting up the softbox with the grids. There's a softbox with a grid on the left side of the picture here, and I was just trying out if it would hit her correctly, or if I needed to turn her around. And I just felt, when I looked at this, I thought, well, this is exactly what I wanted from this picture. Truly inspired by some of the Dutch painters.
And we should say, whenever we talk about the Dutch tilt, it's a painting thing or a lazy arm. All right. Yes. And I really think that in the world of photography, the Dutch photographers have had a pasting, because it's unfair to you, because the Dutch tilt comes from the painting rather than the photographic, isn't it? Yes. And now it's referred to all over the world as a Dutch tilt, and whether you're going to take that and own it. But I think I need to apologize to you, because basically my Dutch tilt is just my lazy arm. Yeah. So lighting wise on here, big umbrella, big soft box. What do you got?
No, small softbox. This is only a 2 foot 60 centimeters octabox with a grid on it, and then there is a very big white flag on the right side of the picture as well. Here, I have some styrofoam. Very tall walls that are 2.5 meters high that can stand on their own, that I put up when I need, you know, big flags, reflectors. It's painted white on one side and black on the other side, so I can turn it around how I like it.
It's the classic commercial setup, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it is.
But very good. I love that image, by the way.
Thank you.
Beautiful kind of thing with it. Okay, our next image, but before we get there, do you prefer to work with very experienced models, or are you okay with newcomers, or how does it work with you?
I'm okay with newcomers, but I have some arrangements with a few modeling agencies that send me some of their new faces from time to time. That they usually need to get some pictures for their books so that they could be sold by the agencies. So I actually do quite a lot of new faces. But when I want to do pictures like the ones we're seeing today, I usually don't use new faces, because I need someone that has some experience and know how to pose their body without me telling them every single detail of what they need to do. In this picture, for instance, this is a very experienced nude art model, Lilith Edge, she's from Sweden, and I've been using her quite a lot. And I gave her the idea that I wanted to do something that I call female geometry, which is basically geometrical structures combined with the nude female body in some way. So I have a series of these with circles and squares and different things. And the minute I told her about my idea, she was hooked into it and knew exactly that she needed to do these poses that were a little bit, how to say, like a statue, sort of caught in the middle of a geometrical figure of some kind. So in these cases, I do prefer having models that are a little more experienced.
And when you're kind of booking models for commercial, obviously you work through a commercial model agency, as it were. A lot of commercial model agencies are not really au fait with nudity at all, are they? It's almost kind of, you've got to go through every single clause and blah 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 and things really. So do you look elsewhere for a more creative, the likes of a body model and things?
You see, when I do pictures like this, I tend, if I know that I want to do nude art or anything nude, I tend to go for models that are very comfortable doing nude photography. I would never ask an agency to book me a model that has no nude or topless pictures in her portfolio at all. So when I need a nude model, I usually go to some of the freelance models that are out there, you know, Purple Port and some of these that will provide you with very good models, because they are, to be honest, when the model is very confident in being nude, I relax a lot more myself. It's much easier to work with a confident nude art model than with a very young model that doesn't really know if she really wants to do this anyway.
Yeah.
And then if you go with something like Georgia Brown, as you saw before, or Lilith Edge here, I get so relaxed that it's so much easier to make the good pictures. So I would always go for experienced nude art models that I know have been around for a while. There's, at the moment, I don't know if you noticed, at the moment there are a lot of Ukrainian models sort of floating the market at the moment, and some of them have only been active 2, 3, 6 months, and they still sell themselves as nude art models. I would probably never use one of those, because I wouldn't be convinced that they were doing it because they like doing it, if you know what I mean. It's
I do, yeah. Cool. So this image, lighting wise, how's it come about?
Big umbrella. My big umbrella just standing on the left side of the pictures, as you can see of the shadow here. It's a setup that I use quite a lot when I want to do something very simple lighting wise, especially if you want a gray white-ish background. Then it's very easy. This is again a very large shoot through umbrella, 6 foot wide, and standing directly facing her, or almost directly facing her, so that it comes much more from the side than you probably usually would do with a big umbrella like that.
Yeah, lovely. Great, like that.
Yeah.
Our next image, classically 1960s kind of image, isn't it? You know, a bit. I think that's the floppy hat, though.
Yeah.
Or the advert for the tights, isn't it? You know.
Yes.
Sorry.
I agree. It's the lighting here is also is very simple. Again, generally my lighting is very simple. If ever I can, I will only use one lamp at the time. It's very rarely that I use more than 2. It's almost never. But I think maybe 80% of all my photography is done with one lamp. I had a teacher at one point who said, "Well, remember, there's only one sun." And yeah, I agree. So most of the time I only need one. I know there are there are situations where you need a little more light, but this is a 2x3 softbox with a grid again that's angled 45 degrees from the top and in from the left of the picture. And so the lighting again here is very, very simple, and she's been drawn a bit from the wall again here so that we get the darker background. And then I have to admit there is a little bit of Photoshop making it a little bit darker in the background. But that's basically it. The lighting on her is as it is. I felt that the background needed to be a little bit darker than I had done it in the studio to make her come out a little bit more.
So if this was a commercial shoot and you're working with a new model, but she's experienced,
yes.
So in other words, it's just your first time together in the shoot and things, really. What's the kind of discussion that you have with a model before you kind of even start to actually think about what you're doing? Can you explain the process on that for me?
Yeah, as you probably already realized, I tend to talk a lot. I'm a heavy talker, so whenever I meet new people, I always start, by just talking to them about, everyday lives, what they do beside modeling and stuff like that, and then and it's basically to bond with so that we get a good chemistry, which I feel is the most important thing, because when the model starts to trust me, then it's much more easy for me to direct her into what I want to do. And then when I know that we are sort of on the same page, that we understand each other, then I will start talking to her about the vision for this shoot. I had another jewelry shoot this summer that were very much inspired by Alice in Wonderland. and we had done some very big paper flowers that were hanging all over the studio, that she was sort of going to walk around these flowers, and so I needed to, explain to her how to get into the feeling of being Alice caught in Wonderland without the rabbit and all that. But the idea was basically that you should be in a Wonderland kind of thing. And I of course there are always some models that you don't have chemistry with, and then it's really hard work to make them do what you want. But I feel that most of the time I'm able to communicate the things that I want to do with, especially because if it's a model that has some experience, they also know that this is a job that you need to be able to put yourself in these different kinds of situations.
Brilliant.
With some of the new faces, just a small, some of the new faces, I talk a lot with the new faces about when being a model is a little bit like being an actress, that you need to put on a role and sort of perform in front of the camera instead of just being pretty. I mean, you have a lot of girls, very, very beautiful girls, that think that being beautiful is the most important thing about being a model. If you're beautiful, then you could be a model. That's not the case. You need something more, and you sometimes don't even need to be beautiful, classically beautiful, but you need to be able to perform in front of the camera. You need to put yourself in the situation that the stylist or the photographer wants you to be in.
Excellent. So how did you build your professional reputation in Copenhagen? Is it quite a competitive market out there, or what?
Oh yeah, it is. It really is. It is very competitive. It's well, especially if you tend to go for a low price, then it's very competitive, because then you will have a lot of hobby photographers that feel, oh, I can do this as well, and then you start. And the minute I realized that I don't want to compete with those, and I actually raised my prices quite a lot, then I started getting the good business that weren't going to settle for the hobby photographer that would do it for 200 pounds or something like that. And then my prices is at least 10 times that. And then I also found that the people that pay more for photography tend to complain less. And it's a very funny thing. So that and to the customers that I get, I use Instagram quite a lot. That's I have to say nowadays is basically my main source of new customers, new clients. In the old days it was Facebook quite a lot, and I've done a little bit of advertising on Google and stuff like that. But it's a lot of it is coming mouth to mouth. I have clients that have used me and was happy with that, and then they recommend me to some other people, and then it just snowballs from there.
Let's talk about this image before we forget. It's the last image of the night, and we can I've got loads of other questions coming on. And by the way, I have to get you back, somebody says, to talk about jewelry photography and nothing else.
Okay, yeah, I will definitely do that. Yeah.
Okay. This image.
Yes. This is I actually. Sometimes it's okay to steal an idea. If you see a picture that someone has done, you are allowed to steal it, or at least, well, steal it, because you will never ever do it exactly as the one you saw. You will always do it a little bit differently. Yeah. And I saw a picture like this, but it was taken outside in a natural light, but the model was sort of pulling her sweater up like this. She was facing more towards the camera, and then I have this model, Nicoline, who's actually a house model nowadays for me. She comes whenever I need to experiment, and she's always happy to try different things. That's a good thing for a studio model or house model. And then I had this sweater, and I said, well, I need to try this. Can we get it as tight so we can see your face through this sweater? And she was okay, and we tried different things. We tried, the lighting of the angle of the lighting changed a little bit so that we would get it right. And in the end, I got this where I could see basically both her nose and her lips, and also I feel that I can see her eye as well. At least there is a little something there that could be the eye.
Yeah.
And then to add it up to, I also get the very nice female figure with the ribs and the breasts and the basic figure of her, so that it sort of spins into a good composition, in my view. At least that's it's also one of my favorite pictures, this one.
And lighting wise again?
Lighting wise, this is a 2x3 octabox without a grid this time. On the right side of the picture here, lighting her up like this. So it's again a very simple setup, lighting wise. I don't think there are not any flags in this one, actually. It's just a softbox.
Okay, so loads of questions coming through. I'm sorry that we can't do them all tonight. I've tried to actually do them, but you know I've got questions in advance.
I told you I'm a big talker, so I'm.
No, Jan, it's absolutely brilliant, honestly. Guys, if you want to see more of Jan's work anyway, obviously you can go directly through Purple Port if you want. That's at Hammerstad. But if you just search on Jan, you'll kind of get there, and I'll put a link when it's live as well with it and things ready. But you can scroll down and see a lot of the model work and everything else with it. Jan, what advice would you give to somebody who's looking to start a studio up?
I've been asked this quite a lot, and my standard answer is always go for it. I mean, and just jump into it, because you will learn a lot very, very quickly. You will be surprised how difficult it is at the beginning, but if you just keep on for a couple of weeks, then you will very quickly get the hang of it. And don't go and buy the most expensive equipment from day one, because you basically don't need it. A lamp is a lamp, a light is light. There are some advantages to using ProPhoto over Godox, but if you just need to start up very simple, go with Godox or any of the others. It doesn't really matter. Light is light.
Any advice on how a photographer can start to develop a signature style?
Oh, that's a really big question. To be honest, I don't feel that I have a signature style. I myself don't feel it, but I have a lot of people coming to me, and my wife, for instance, if I haven't shown my wife some of my pictures and someone posts this online, she will come to me and say, "Isn't this one of your pictures?" Even if my name is not on it, because she can recognize my style, and a lot of people can, but I cannot myself. I know what I like, but I cannot sort of put my own finger on the style. So I think what you need to do is basically do what you like doing, because if you do what you like doing, then you will gradually get better at it, and then you will develop the style that you feel is good for your kind of pictures. That's basically what I've done. Always try to do what I like to do.
What's the best photography advice you've ever received?
Basically try and try and try again, to be honest, because it is all about trying and knowing that you will fail. If you try doing something, you will fail eventually or at some point, and then just try again, because you will get it at the end.
What's next for you creatively, and any future projects that you can share with us? Anything exciting? You don't have to. It's just questions going through.
I have a few ideas, but nothing has really sort of materialized at the moment. The problem is when you cannot be really truly creative when you are busy. And in November and December are very busy month for me. There's a lot of campaigns that are shooting in these months so that they can be used in the spring. And then even though I don't do a lot of family photography, I still do a little bit, because I started up originally doing family photography. So some of my old clients, right around this time of year, they come, oh, we got a great idea for a gift, Christmas gift for grandpa. Couldn't we make some pictures of the kids? And oh yeah, we can. And it's always, you know, from December 15th or something like that. So we have maybe a week or less to do the pictures. So there's always a lot to do in these months. So at the moment, I have some ideas, but none that are really sort of haven't really settled in yet.
And the last question, there are about 50 others, okay? So I'm just cherry picking these, but we'll make it the last one.
We'll do this again, Mark. Then.
Yeah, absolutely. I do try to keep within the hour because otherwise they nag me.
Yeah, sure,
then we have a great night like this, and then we get nagged that we didn't go on for another hour. Anyway, risk versus reward. David's just put in, all right? What's the riskiest? This is why it's the last one. What's the riskiest creative decision you've made on a shoot that either failed spectacularly or became one of your proudest works?
Well, the one that actually became one of the things that I'm really happy with was the one with the legs that I told you about, and I can bring that picture if we do it jewelry next time. Yeah. Because I was challenging the client quite a bit on this one, and I was taking a chance when I asked to do this, and to be honest, I wasn't completely sure that we were able to do it because you need to balance the glass on the foot and everything. So that was one of the times when it actually went very well. I had about a half year ago, I think I had an idea of this was actually not really for a client, but it was one of the creative ideas that I felt that I needed to do. I had a lot of yarn that I wanted to put around a model, sort of not to tie her up, but make it look like a dress or, you know, sort of kind of thing. And we spent 45 minutes or maybe an hour just, you know, whirling a yarn around her, and it failed miserably. I mean, you will never see any of the pictures because it just didn't work. It just really didn't work. And, you know, I had the idea in my head. I knew what I wanted to achieve, but I simply wasn't able to do it. It was really horrible. And I could only do it because it's actually the house model with the sweater you just saw in the last picture that I was doing this with, and because she's so very used to me, it was okay with her that we didn't get any pictures. We really didn't get any pictures of that shoot at all. It was just horrible.
Well, in all the talk photographies I've done, we've never ended on a fail before.
Good. Good.
I love it. Jan, thank you so much. Honestly, I was chuffed to beans when you said yes, and now that you've got to come back and do a jewelry one, yes. I'll be hounding you to the end of time on that one. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a joy.
Thanks for everybody being online. Thanks for the great questions coming through as well, and thanks for my usual regulars who kind of put all the questions in advance as well. It's always good to actually be seeing that. Jan, a Merry Christmas to you, honestly, and wherever you are in the world, this is the last talk photography of the year, and I wish you all an amazing time. And if there's nothing more to end the year on than seeing 8 of Jan's images, this is to inspire you into 2025. So thank you very much. It's been an absolute photography pleasure for me to actually have that hour with you chatting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Take care, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Bye.